Well, hi, Travis. We're so thrilled to have you on the show. You're such a wonderful artist, but also you're so involved in our community. I've so enjoyed getting to know you and work with you probably, I'd say, over the past year when we first connected. So it's great to have you on this Lackawanna Arts and Culture Live where we showcase our great artists. So how are you? Doing good?
Pretty good. Thanks,
Yeah.
Marie, for inviting me on here. I'm doing really well today.
Yeah, so let's start out because your first love is being an artist and creating work. How did you become an artist and your journey as an artist?
Well, I think I've been an artist my entire life. My earliest memories are of drawing and coloring, and it kind of stuck with me for a while. I thought I would have pursued it as a career choice, but I didn't. I did a bunch of different jobs earlier on, and I don't know. It was around 2008 or 2009. I really got this urge to create more than I had been over the past few years, and I started painting. And I don't really know what it was that kind of clicked in me, but I around that time I kind of figured like if I put the time into this and I pursue it and I try to perfect this craft, I think I could be good at actually painting. And so since 2009, I've been taking it really serious and just trying to perfect my craft and create images that are beautiful and thought-provoking pieces that spark conversations.
Well, I think that's a well said because your different life experiences. I wonder if they've helped you as an artist because one of the things I love about your work is the people feel so real and the emotions. There's often a lot of joy in your paintings, but there's also, some serious topics. But I just feel like I want to meet these people or I know them. Is that something you strive for in your work?
I want the viewer to have that sense of familiarity with the image itself. And so I try to tell people, like, when you see them, it should feel like that's your nephew or your uncle or your brother or your neighbor. I want my images to feel comfortable to people.
And I like because I was a history major and I also love literature. You often put like even in the painting behind you, books, especially related to the Black experience. Like I just love those details. It makes me want to go look them up. And has that been important to you? It's kind of like a way to educate. I don't know if educate's the right word, but those details in your paintings I find very interesting.
Yes, and educate is the word that I would use
Okay.
because in my reading, I come across a lot of books that I find hold valuable information, and when I try to have discussions about these particular topics, I find that very little people have read these books or are aware of the authors of these books. And so I took it upon myself to create my reader series specifically to help make people aware of literature that they may potentially be oblivious to any other way, and in an effort to educate.
I'm glad that I used the right word because, yeah, I think it is. And I think that art can do that. And it's important because sometimes art has a way of waking us up and maybe speaking to us in a way that just a lecture or something doesn't.
Exactly.
So thank you for that. And I think that's in a good segue to you do wear a lot of hats and like I said, you really help our community. And I know you've been a big part of Black's Grant Project, which is just wonderful too. They've really educated our community and have really become the fabric of our social life and let people know about our the history in Scranton and the really rich history, both the history, but also what's going on now. So do you want to tell her, you have an event coming up that was the first one last year, Juneteenth, which I was thrilled about. We have a lot of, it's kind of, we have the Irish, the Polish, and the Italian, and it's great, to celebrate all our diversity and heritage. Can you tell us a little bit about what Juneteenth is and what Black Scranton is doing this week for it?
So yeah, Black Scranton was founded by Glennis Johns, and she's a Scranton native, and she put together this project, like you said, in order to help everyone be aware of the rich history of the Scranton and Lackawanna area. And last year we hosted a Juneteenth event for the most part because a lot of people, once again, are unaware of these things. And so what Juneteenth is a celebration of the last day of slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863. In the Deep South, slave owners who did not want to give up their property moved further west where it wasn't as strictly enforced as it was in the South and closer to the East Coast. And so for another 2 years, there was still slave practicing going on. And in 1865, on June 19th, the last plantation and slave owners in Texas were notified that they had to tell their slaves that they had received their freedom. And now we celebrate that day and commemorate that day as a historical moment where the African diaspora was released from bondage in America.
Yeah, it's a great day in American history. So I think I'm so happy that our city is now celebrating that. And, you know, this may be a difficult topic, but I think we need to acknowledge it. Our country is still healing.
Yes.
There's a lot of issues right now, but do you see the power? What is the power of art? I mean, sometimes art seems small, but it can be so important in building those understandings and healing communities.
Yes, the power of art is it is able to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfort.
I love that quote. It's true. Art both heals us, but also wakes us up to things that maybe we were ignorant to. So that's just a great quote.
Like once you said, an image is worth 1,000 words. So a piece of art can say something that it would take a lecturer minutes or hours to try to express, and you can glean the same concept in a fraction of a moment by viewing certain art. So art is very valuable to our social fabric. It's something that mankind, it's innate to us. The oldest things that we can find that we've left on this planet is art. And we've been doing it since drawing on cave walls. It's our way of communication.
That's beautifully said. That's kind of a good segue. And before we hear about, you're going to talk about your process as an artist, but one of the other things I love about you as an artist is that you're very supportive of other artists. And I think you've done a lot to help people, and you even have your own show. Do you want to talk a little bit about and encourage people maybe to come and check your show, The Round Table, out?
Oh, yes. So I actually host a show. It's called Electric City Television's Roundtable Discussions, which is Scranton's fine nickname, the Electric City. So we definitely chose that for the title. And I sit down and I have other local artists, visual artists, mostly painters, but I've interviewed photographers as well, and to help them get exposure and bring them on and talk about their creative process and what helps them stay motivated and what are their goals and what are some of their favorite achievements, and just having fun, interesting conversations with local artists. And it's a really good time. And we are on our Scranton's local channel. Mm-hmm. And I think we're filming season 2 now, so we don't have dates yet. It's still COVID season, so things are kind of iffy, but we'll definitely have some new episodes, and I'll keep everybody posted with links and dates for those.
Yeah, and we'll try to get that word out. And we love ECTV, so I try to plug them every week because they're very helpful. And you're a busy guy, because I know I'm going to switch you over now, but you said you've been doing I don't know where you find time to do all of this, but you've been doing a lot of commission work too, which is awesome that you're getting commissions.
Yes. Right now I have my hands filled with several projects. I just, this year alone, I've completed 3 paintings for clients. One client was a repeat client, and she brought a bigger, more elaborate piece this time around. A friend of mine had me customize some sneakers for him. I'm working on 2 more commissions now. There's a young lady, a young entrepreneur from Scranton. She's opening up a event and entertainment hall titled the Johnny Pump Room. And I think I may be doing some mural work for her. I currently, I'm employed with Outreach Community Center for Resources. I've been doing mural projects at our facilities. So just, it's to the point where I'm feeling like I'm achieving my dream, and art is my life right now. Like my entire life is art.
Oh, what an inspiring message. So I'm going to jump out so that we can actually hear you talk about your process and art. I'm really looking forward to that. And then I'll jump back in to say goodbye. But again, thanks for being on the show. It was so nice to have a moment to sit down.
I really appreciate it, and I'll talk with you in a little while.
Okay.
All right, guys. So what I'm currently working on here, hope I can get, let me take this controller off of there. But this piece is a piece that I already completed, and a client wanted the piece, was a little bit out of his price range, so we agreed to redo the piece on a smaller scale. So I got the image on the canvas, and what the basic process that I do is you sketch out your image. You want to get your image secured to the canvas, because I just use normal pencils. So after I sketch it, I'll get black acrylic paint and outline the sketch itself so that it's stuck on there so I won't lose the drawing. And then I do a process called washing or toning the canvas, where you're giving the white canvas a color to let the oil paints have a pigment to refract off of. And initially, it'll help your first layer of paint be that much more vibrant so you can see exactly where you want to go from there. And I think I may have, oh, where's that? And here is a quick snapshot of how I do my pieces. You start, is that glare at me? So start with a drawing. You outline your drawing and tone your canvas. And then the next step we do is known as a underpainting. And what the underpainting is basically your foundation layer of paint. And you want your underlayer to be as dark as possible without losing the image itself. And that way you can build your midtones and your light tones upon your darker colors. And that what in effect gives oil paintings that lush roundness to it, that it kind of gives it that three-dimensional pop to it. And so this is a very, very old process, tried and true process that will give you good results every time. And the main thing is patience. So a light sketch, tone your canvas, underpainting, take your time, you have a complete piece. So what I want to do here is I want to finish toning this canvas and getting this prepped and ready to be painted. And then after that, I have another piece that already has an underpainting on it. And we're going to mix some skin tones. And I want to show you guys the colors that I use and the medium that I use and how I mix and blend my skin tones. And we're going to work on adding the third layer to another piece. So let's work on finishing toning this canvas. And for the tone, we use acrylic paints, which are water soluble and they dry really fast, which is one of the best things about acrylics. Some people tone their canvases with oil paints. It just takes a little bit longer to dry. But it doesn't, I don't think it makes a significant difference if you tone with oil or if you use acrylic paints as your medium. I get a wide brush and wet the canvas a little bit. And it really doesn't take a lot of paint. And you can tone with almost any color, reds, blues, greens. And this one I'm gonna just use just some black paint and get a nice gray tone to the canvas. And by wetting that canvas a little bit, it helps spread that paint out. And also by toning the canvas, when you go to do your first layer of paint or your underpainting, if you don't hit every spot on the canvas, you still won't have that really bright white shining through, just because it already has a layer of some color on it. So you won't notice it as much. It won't be as visible. And the main thing we look for in painting is canvas cover. You just want to make sure your canvas is covered nice and good. Don't have hollow spots on it. And I just recently started doing them with this grayish tone. For the longest, I like using raw sienna or even burnt umber as a toner for my canvases. But recently, I don't know, just said let me try just a gray tone. And in some instances, I think it works better with the gray tone, especially if you're going to have a deeper and darker background. That grayness helps those dark colors bounce immediately. And so essentially this entire background is going to be black. So I figured I'll tone it with the black again. So that first layer of black will really start to pop already. Need a little bit more paint here on my palette. And don't never be scared to like move your painting around on the easel either. Because it wouldn't be comfortable for me to paint that low down. So I'll just flip this upside down so I can get to this area. Works just the same way. And this doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't, I mean, as long as it's transparent and you can still see your image under there. All right. And that's pretty simple. Like I said, you can do it any color. It doesn't matter what color you do it. It just helps not to paint directly onto a white canvas. Like I said, you'll be able to see the whiteness of the canvas through your paint, and it makes it look dull and kind of flat. So tone your canvases. Some people use gesso. I don't really put gesso on my canvases. I think the acrylic tone or wash roughs the canvas up enough where those oil paints are still really attracted to the fabric. So, and this is a really easy step. So let's take this off of the canvas, off the easel, and put a different canvas up. So I'm working on several commission pieces, but at the same time, I'm still working on some art for myself. This piece right here is another installment to the Reader series. She's holding a book written by Dr. Amos Wilson entitled The Falsification of African Consciousness. And so this is a piece that I've been wanting to do for a while, because once again, I think it's an important literature that needs to be out there. And I started this piece actually before a lot of these revolts and these unrest has been going on in the streets. And so this is the information I think people need to be aware of. And so I just want to keep trying to encourage people to expand their understanding of social issues. And if I can do that in a painting, it looks nice, I think that's pretty dang neat. So what I want to do now, guys, is get some colors on my palette. And I normally go from dark to light across my palette. And I'll do browns, reds, and oranges, and then the yellows at the end most of the time. So I want to start here with 2 dark browns. This is a secret concoction that I made. So these are both the same color. They're both Van Dyke Brown, but they're 2 different brands. Both really good paint brands though. One of them is Grumenbach. And this paint is really nice and slick and really smooth. And this right here is Winsor and Newton's Van Dyke Brown. And this paint right here, it has a lot of body to it. And so when I mix these 2 Van Dyke Browns together, I get this perfect color and perfect consistency for what I want to do. It took me a while to try that out. I was always scared to try to mix those 2. So this is another Grumenbach color right here. Is transparent orange. And I put this in a browns because it really does look brown to me. But it's technically an orange. And then we're going to use some Gamblin, and this is a Venetian red. It's really similar to Indian red or light red. And a little magenta. And then we're going to put the yellows. I like this raw sienna. There's a really nice, like, deep mustard color. And some more Gamblin. And this is gold ochre. For a long time, I used yellow ochre for my skin tones. And yellow ochre, I still use it occasionally, but I like this gold ochre a little better. It gives almost a glowy effect. And so these are my yellows and peaches. And like I said, I use a few different brands, but these are the ones that I stick with. They're either going to be Gamblin, Grumenbach, or Winsor and Newton. These are really good products, and they're fairly inexpensive. I think Gamblin's probably the more expensive ones out of the paints that I use, but they're still in a really decent price range. They're not like Old Holland or those Rembrandts. Those paints can get kind of pricey sometimes. So in the last color is some flesh tone. So essentially, this is probably a normal palette for me. and irrespective of what skin complexion or skin tone that I'm trying to create, if I arrange these colors here, my deep browns, my deep reds, my yellows, and my peach colors, I can create. I could paint an albino or somebody from the Sudan with this same palette of colors right here. It's very versatile. Uh, I've been using this same format for a long time, and these colors just seem to work well for me. And and the brands of colors that I use seem to work well. So what I want to do is get some brushes. And probably I'm going to use something like this. Maybe one of these and one of these. Come on, laptop. Honestly, I want to find a way to get you guys a little bit closer. Okay. And normally I like to start around the eyes. When you paint, if you can get the eyes to look right, everything else kind of falls in place. And isn't that something? Where did I put the photograph for this? Wow. Where's the photograph? Okay. I had misplaced this for a second. It got stuck to something else because I left the tape on it. All right. So take the image there, right beside it. And since I'm right-handed, I kind of like to paint the same way you write so that you're not trying to go back and touch the same area. So I'm gonna start at this eye and then work my way this way. Now, when I blend my colors, pull very little amount just from the edge. And normally I don't try to blend more than 3 colors at a time. It seems like anything past sometimes maybe 4, but once you start trying to blend 3 or 4 colors, it'll just turn muddy looking. So that's one of the main things I had to practice with is figuring out the tone that I want and which 2 or 3 colors is going to give me that result. I always want to start in the shadows, the dark areas. It's easier to lighten up a darker shade than it is to darken up a lighter shade. So if you paint something too light and you want to try to make it darker, it's really hard. So start with the darks first, your darker areas, your shadows, then build the light around that. And normally it works. Sometimes you'll have to do it in reverse just because one part of the image may appear to be in front of another part. I think I can go a little bit lighter. Get some Naples yellow, just a little bit. And some flesh tone. I try to use one brush as much as I can, even if I go from the extreme of colors without like actually cleaning the brush. Uh, I used to I used to think that you have to get all the paint off the brush each time if you're gonna change your colors and try to use the same brush, but it's not really necessary. And then sometimes if you're washing your brush too much while you're changing colors, you'll have a lot of thinner or mineral spirits or whatever you're using to dissolve the oils will stay in your bristles, and then essentially it'll get into the paints on your palette, and those mineral spirits dull the paint down dramatically. So if you just have a rag or a paper towel, and if you wipe the pigments off good enough and jump into another color, it really doesn't disturb it that bad. And that's why I love oil paints. They're so versatile, they're so easy to work with, so forgiving on mistakes, and just by nature, the duration that they can last. I mean, that's why we still can see the Mona Lisa after 513 years or something. It was done with oil paints. I may have to add even one more lighter tone. Uh, if you notice, I didn't put any white on my palette, and that's because some people try to use white to lighten up other colors, and it doesn't exactly lighten some colors up. White kind of fades the color, and and so it's always easier to try to find a lighter color to lighten up a color instead of just trying to throw white into it. Like I'm using this really pale peach color to lighten up my deeper yellows instead of trying to apply white in there, which would fade it out, and you would lose some of the hue. But there is a white that I do like to use. It's called warm white, and it's kind of it's basically a off white or a bone white, where it doesn't have that really bright titanium white effect to it, but it's still it gives you a lighter tone than your other lighter shades, such as this flesh tone I'm using right now. So yeah, I think I'll add some of that to this palette shortly. And it's always good to have several projects going at one time, even if I'm not working on a lot of commissions at once. I try to have at least 3 or 4 of my own personal projects going, just to stay busy, stay consistent with your art. If you're going to take it serious, just stay consistent. And especially if you're working with oils like me, and I don't think they take long to dry. Everybody complains about the drying time for oils, but even if a painting is you know being kind of hesitant to dry for you, you can just start another piece and work on another painting. And you work on that for a little while, and then the first painting will be dry. And if the first painting isn't dry yet, you start another painting and keep them in rotation like that. Just like I did a little bit on the client's painting, and I got to a stopping point where it needs some time to dry. Once again, it's acrylics that I applied to the canvas, and it'll dry in 30 minutes. But in that 30 minutes, while that's drying, I still have something else I can work on. Persistence. And then you'll get into a nice routine of having several pieces going at one time. I know one of my paint buddies, it always seems like he's doing 7 or 8 pieces at a time. I'm like, dang, guy. I'm gonna need that warm white. Where is this? There it is. All right, just a little bit of that. And even with the warm white, I still want to be very, very gentle with it. And the eyes have so many different facets to it that they to get it right, it does take a little bit of time and patience. And that's why I like working on the eyes first, because they are complicated. Just get the hard stuff out the way in the beginning. And plus it is the focal point of the face. It's just normal to look people in the eyes when you speak to them or when you look at them. And so that's how we really acknowledge each other. So you work on the eyes first, get those eyes looking right, and then everything else seems pretty easy after that. Well, until you get the hands. Hands are pretty cool. I still struggle with a lot of things, and I try to challenge myself in every piece, not to the point where I'm frustrated and don't want to finish the piece, but on just technical levels, trying to do something that looks complicated. I look at an image and I say, oh man, that looks hard. And then my next thought is, I want to try to paint that. So hands, portraits in general are not the easiest thing to paint. And so just practicing. But hands are tough. one of my a young art buddy of mine asked, any tips on how I can draw better? I say, draw your hand. Every time you get bored, you ain't got nothing to draw, look at your hand and draw that thing. Different angles from the front, from the back, from the side, however, just draw your hand, your fingers, your knuckles, and you will become a better artist. Do contour drawings of your hand. Those are rough. I don't even like doing those. But the practice, you need to practice. And this model is actually a friend of mine who I met at our last year's Juneteenth celebration, where Terra Preta Prime was such a graceful event host for us. It was an excellent day, excellent celebration. Cannot wait until our Jubilee this Friday on the 19th in Nayard Park, in Nayard Park by the Everhart Museum. Scranton has so much cool stuff, yo. I swear. Now I want to go to Nayard Park. I want to go now. I think I'm going to need a little bit more of an orangish color right there. I'm going to take some of this Indian red, add a little bit of flesh tone to it. It should be a little lighter, maybe a little bit lighter. That's another reason I like to have the photo right here. You can actually kind of gauge your colors a little bit. And it doesn't have to be spot on every time. As long as your tones are correct, as long as your tonal values are correct, the image is going to look correct. And that's why you can do monochrome and have a painting that's all green, but the tones in the shades of green makes it look like Gandhi or Martin Luther King or whoever, and it's just one color because of your tones. So as long as your tones are good, your colors don't have to be exactly spot on with your reference. And that's just another way that the piece is yours. And that's what the reference is. It's a reference. You don't have to recreate it exactly. It's just a reference source. So I grabbed a little bit bigger brush, fill in this, paint right inside her glasses. And my pieces tend to have a lot of detail in it, or a high level of detail. So I use a lot of small brushes. And then one of the one of the main questions, and I asked other artists, geez, tongue is so heavy right now. I asked other artists the same thing, like, how long does it take you to finish a piece? And you know, some people can do them real fast, and it takes other people hours. And when people ask me, and I say, well, that piece took me like 90 hours or 75 hours. They're like, wow, that's a long time. I'm like, yeah, but I use these little small brushes. These brushes are so small. You gotta go really slow. But it's all worth it in it. It's all worth it. And so, like I said, I'm currently applying the third layer, the second layer of paint. But I normally do at least 3 layers. So the first layer, which my mentor doesn't even consider a layer, this is just the underpainting, but I say it's still a layer of paint. So you do your first layer is as dark as you can get it. Your second layer of paint, you really try to focus on your mid-tones and some of your dark highlights. And then the third layer, you really focus on your highlights and your bright whites. And normally that should be it. Sometimes you may have to add a fourth layer or a fifth layer or a sixth layer, depending on the image you're trying to create and exactly how much detail you want to get into it, or just how complicated the piece is. But normally for me, like 3 layers of paint, 3 or 4 layers of paint, and get it to that point where I feel comfortable with it. Once again, it's just taking your time, building it up. And when I do in-person tutorials or art lessons, and the one thing that's hard to get across, especially a new art student, is the first layer of paint doesn't technically have to look good, you know, especially if you plan on doing 2 or 3 layers of paint on top of that. No one's ever going to see the first layer of paint. And some people want to take a lot of time to make it look good initially. There's just that patience factor. It's like constructing a building almost. Got to have the foundation, and then the supports, and then you put the roof on it, and all that good stuff. I think I want to lighten it up right where the center of the nose, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't like cleaned this brush the whole time, and I've been in almost every color with this brush so far. coming back with some more of this red and some of this going into this golden ochre. Trying to get that shadow that's right on the side of the bridge of the nose. Gonna go back into these Van Dyke browns. That's a kind of a dark shadow there. Deepen it up a little bit. Maybe even add some of this magenta. A little bit of magenta. It's too much. Like that.
So it's amazing to see how the humanness, how you develop a humanness through paint. We're running a little short on time, but we do want to see.
All right.
That's okay. It's so fascinating. It's really neat seeing how how the life of the person emerges through the paint. You know.
I love the process. Love the process.
So you will be at the Juneteenth Jubilee this Friday, right? If people want to learn more and talk to you a little bit, right? Did you say that you're going to be there? Yeah.
Yes, I'll be there. Be there for the celebrations, and it starts at 4:00.
Social distancing, which is nice. It's in a park, so we can all be safe, but we can still gather and celebrate. So
we're gonna have some live music. We're gonna have some drink vendors out there. We'll definitely have sanitation stations.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just nice. Yeah.
And wearing our mask and social distancing, but just a gathering, a jubilee, and solidarity.
It's much needed now. And then I hope we can see this painting someday. Will you be, hopefully maybe when we can go back out showing that? You said that's one of your personal work.
Yes. By the time the quarantine ends, I have a whole show ready.
Yeah, so that's something to look forward to.
Yes.
So I love seeing how it develops. The process is also an art form itself, just the whole coming together. It's so beautiful. And like you said, we have the educational piece in there to learn about some of these great works. Go ahead. You were gonna say?
Oh no, that was it.
Yeah, so thanks, Travis. And again, if you want to meet Travis in person and talk to him more about the process or the activities, please join us on Friday at the Jubilee. And I can't wait. And now we're going to bring on somebody who actually paints in words. So I think that's a nice juxtaposition where we have a poet, Laurel Rajeski, that we're bringing on. But good luck, Travis. Can't wait to see you on Friday. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Maureen. Thanks for having me on and the opportunity to share more with everybody. Yeah. Bye, guys.